Hi, everyone. Welcome to the senhasegura webinar. My name is David Muniz, and I'm here to present the Cybersecurity Trends for 2023. And I'm not alone. Here with me, I have Rogério Godoy, which is our Chief Marketing Officer. Hi, Roger.
Hi, David. Hi, everyone.
And together with me, I also have Florian Kraus, which is part of our partner network. Hey, Florian, how are you?
Hello, David. I'm fine. Hello, Roger.
Hi, Florian. Nice seeing you, man.
Well, I'm not. I don't know about you guys, but it's kind of scared me to know that we're heading to the end of the year, and now it's time to present what we believe, what we gather between our studies, our research, what we think will drive the cybersecurity market in 2023. And we believe that by learning and by applying those trends and the recommendations that we give during the webinar, we believe that you may increase the cybersecurity level in your organizations. And today is more important because cybersecurity risks are increasingly associated with business risks. But without further ado, let's and we receive a copy after this session. You're also welcome to send us questions. We'll be glad to answer them. And I also like to remind that during each one of the trends, our team will put in the screen links to rich material that we have here at Senha Segura, and you'll be able to learn more in depth about each one of these trends. Okay? So without further ado, let's start with the first cybersecurity trend for 2023. The first one is data privacy regulation, more data privacy regulation. We have GDPR, we have LGPD in Brazil. There's the US is also working on a new data privacy regulation. Thailand, Japan, those were some countries that passed data privacy regulation through 2022. And well, basically because data is the new oil, we believe that we are increasingly dependent on data, and we have data breaches, the increased number of data breaches. So what happened is that governments are moving, they're acting to enforce they protect data from their citizens. And according to Gartner, through 2023, government regulations requiring organizations to provide those customer privacy rights will cover 5 billion citizens and more than 70% of global GDP. And well, with all of these multiple jurisdiction, all of these laws require companies to enforce and to implement a data privacy compliance process. So in order to evaluate and also to evaluate the success of those data privacy programs, we believe that companies need to define those metrics to measure the success of the actions taken to protect data. And also, we believe that is a matter of trust. Whenever, well, at least customers are increasingly concerned about how companies take care of their data. I don't know about you two, Florian and Roger, but I'm not willing to make business with a company that do not take care of my data. What do you think of that? Would you trust a company that? I'll start with you, Roger. How do you feel about that? Would you give your data to a company that might you think that might be a victim of a data breach?
Yeah, I think that really gets us into what kind of data we're talking about. I think the whole thing about new regulations and norms, it's because they want specifically protect personal data, especially sensitive data. And the reason that those data need to be protected is because they can cause harm. They can really damage and expose an individual through a relationship that was based in trust, like you said. So I trust my information to a particular company, and if they do not do their job of protecting it, uh, well, who is going to help me to solve that situation? Like in the healthcare industry, for instance, there's a lot of sensitive information regarding an individual that you do not want to see it out there. And so for that reason, I think countries and governments are getting more responsible on making sure that the population itself is protected. And what brings a challenge to the companies that register that kind of information, because now they have to be concerned of what is the regulation. Let's get Florian, for instance. He's based in out of Germany. He's Everything that is connected to the GDPR goes under companies that are based in Germany, but not just GDPR. If they do have information of customers based outside of Europe, they also need to be concerned about norms and regulations that are connected to those users, especially if you're doing a business online or anything like that. So I would not be comfortable to know that my information, uh, that one that I trust to a company, was left unguarded, and now I'm at risk of being exposed, and that for sure would be a concern moving forward if I would ever do business with that company again. But I know that Germany is quite strict about this as well, right, Florian?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Rogerio. And basically, there's little to add from my side. You have, yeah, said everything that is important about it. But what comes to my mind when we talk about more data privacy is the point that, especially in Germany, there's a specific deadline for implementing the latest requirements of GDPR. And this deadline is actually the 1st September of 2023. So I do expect a lot of movement based on this aspect in the coming year. So everything that has been said and done in the last few years to actually protect our citizens in terms of their own or their privacy, their own data, this actually comes to the point where beginning in the next year, it's getting crucial for companies to just be ready for this. Yeah.
What I think it's interesting here is that Europeans, and I'd like to congratulate because Europeans have been pioneer in terms of data protection. Comes earlier in the directive from '95, and then it evolved to the GDPR. So I think Europeans are a great base model for data privacy. The second trend that I like to bring here is the zero trust adoption by organizations. And during our research, it was interesting because, well, we hear about zero trust for a long time. Well, at least since I started working with cybersecurity, I hear about zero trust. But however, I found out that companies are not able to implement zero trust. And that was an interesting finding. And now with the pandemic, well, the migration movement from the security perimeter, the trust but verify models, it has been accelerated, these migration to zero trust based models. And like Gartner's Carta, Google's Beyond Corp. So, and the COVID, well, it further intensified this movement. But the interesting thing here is that zero trust is not a philosophy, it's not a product, it's not a technology. Zero trust is a framework, is a group of best practices in order to increase the level of security. And it's interesting because it's quite identity based. You need to constantly verify the identity of the users in order to protect the organization and the infrastructure. And there's an interesting finding that, according to Gartner, 60% of organizations will embrace zero trust. And however, 50% of those companies, more than half of them, will fail to realize those benefits. Well, that was quite impressive to me. did you also think that was impressive, Florian? What are your thoughts on this? Do you think it's a good percentage? Well, a reasonable percentage of companies that will fail? That was something that surprised me. What do you think?
It honestly, it doesn't surprise me that much. Me and my role as head of sales and business development, I do take a look at and a deeper look at a lot of solutions that approach to our market, the DACH market, and investigate on what they are good for, and how companies could benefit in terms of security. And what usually surprises me is that a lot of vendors we are talking to do not even implement the most basic security options to actually get access to their solutions. One of those most basic security options is, of course, multi-factor authentication. And if solutions that are therefore protecting us, protecting our data, do not even get this done in the right way, I assume that it's obvious that most companies will fail this goal to actually implement zero trust. And therefore, it's absolutely crucial for me that this is something that if I would be in charge, if I would be a CISO of a company, that I would take care that all of my solutions that I am looking for to get in my infrastructure would basically help me to just implement zero trust by, for example, implementing MFA on every critical bit of cybersecurity I have in my company. So yes, I do think that those numbers most likely are correct.
Yeah, I think that those numbers do make us sad, but yeah, they're definitely correct. Yeah, but that's the reason why we need to talk about trends, because we can help people to get a better sense of, where the struggle is. So yeah, I don't go for it, Dave.
I was yesterday we were talking during the presentation, during the preparation to the webinar, and I'd like to stress this because I think it's important, Roger, and it's something that you mentioned yesterday about the concept of zero trust and not trusting everyone, and the constantly verification of the user identity. So I'd like to explore this better with you during this session. How do you think the concept of zero trust is faced by organization? How do you see that people, that leaders view zero trust?
Sure. I think one thing that really got my attention in 2022, and that's the beauty about talking about these trends, because this is not something that we decided to select after like a day of studying and things like that. This is like a sum up of everything that we've seen throughout 2022. And back in October, I was a part of the Gartner Symposium, the IT Symposium in Orlando, in the USA, which is the biggest IT summit for Gartner. And a lot of leaders, especially IT leaders, such as CISOs and CIOs and even CEOs, they were all a part of that summit. And what I got to hear a lot was that the struggle is not really about implementing a specific solution or not, because when they move towards hiring a solution and make sure that solution helps them out as far as increasing the security part of their companies, that is like in the action side of the business already. They're doing something. But to get there, you need to make sure that the leaders of that company, they do understand why they need to take action. And when you talk about zero trust, this can be perceived by those leaders as if they should not trust anyone. And that's not the issue. You can't trust, you have to trust. You have to actually show the market that you are a trustworthy company. But that kind of trust needs to be verified. So you need to understand who and what kind of personnel, and that goes for people that are working inside of the company, but also for third parties, those contractors and those people that will be a part of your system, but not a part of the company itself. So you need to be able to identify what kind of trust each individual needs to have. So what kind of access they should have inside of their company, and make sure that you're covering it all, you're managing it all. So, like Florian said, MFA is one of the greatest steps towards bringing a layer of protection, and that should be applied to everyone. Doesn't matter what position you have inside of the company, and that's where leaders have a hard time understanding. So, the biggest struggle that they pointed out at the Gartner Symposium in 2022 was not that people were not looking into zero trust, but they were having a hard time communicating it, explaining it in the right way to the right people. And I think that's one thing that we should all look for next year. How do we overcome that challenge of communication? How do we explain people that zero trust does not mean that you do not trust people or you do not trust the company? It means that your trust will be managed, and that's the goal.
Mhm.
And also the relevance to the business. I think it's also
Yeah.
something important that we know we need, especially for the executives and the board. We have to let them understand what exactly zero trust means.
For
That's an
sure.
excellent point.
Yeah.
Well, the third trend that we'll bring here is cloud security. And well, during the pandemic, organization increased their migration to cloud infrastructure. So, and cloud is open to sometimes it's open to the internet, and it's harder to protect a cloud environment than on premises. And we have several vendors that are working with cloud applications. We have CSPs like Google, GCP, Azure, and AWS. But the aspect that I'd like to bring here is that sometimes IT leaders and security leaders, they rely on those CSPs, on those cloud providers, thinking that they have the security mechanisms to protect the companies. But at the same time, the configuration of those cloud solutions depend also on the customers. The burden is not only on the cloud provider, and it's interesting to know that 99%, according to Gartner, 99% of data breaches in cloud environments are not the customer's fault, are the customer's fault, sorry, and not the CSPs.
Mhm.
And not only that, the global spending on global cloud security will reach $6.69 billion on 2023. But before that, I'd like to get this number. How do you see, Roger, that why do you see that organizations rely that much on the CSPs, and how do you think that security leaders must face this paradigm, this problem of protecting their cloud environments?
Well, clouds are good for a lot of reasons, but I think the main reason that a company looks into this kind of situation and scenario, so why do they decide to use cloud as much as they're moving forward, as according to the numbers you just shared, is elasticity. So you can, expand the business or shrink it as far as the infrastructure of the business goes on demand, so as you need it, and that really makes things faster, which brings productivity to the business as well. So you can be more agile and you can be more in tune with the rhythm of the market once you go to the cloud. And to do that internally, as far as security goes, means that you need to manage not just the infrastructure part of it, but also the security protection layer. It needs to be able to expand and shrink as you need more elasticity, as I just mentioned it, so you can gain more scalability. And cloud security providers, CSPs, they do that. That's their job. So they need to make sure that their environment is as safe as possible. So as a customer, as a client, I can trust that my information will be protected once I'm inside there. It's kind of like a bank, and I used this before. Where do you want to store your money? You want to store your assets in a place that you can be sure that will be protected. But using the same example here, if you reach out a bank's customers and that person is under an attack, and that person is not protected enough or not trained enough, even though your asset might be protected inside of a bank, they could have access to that kind of thing. because they're using the user itself. So the problem is not the bank, but the user that doesn't really know how to apply certain rules and certain behaviors in their daily activities to make sure that that protection is well used. And I think the same goes here for cloud. It's not just about having a cloud that is as safe as possible, but if your keys to that cloud are not protected as well, or if the people that are using those keys do not know how to properly behave, you have a very weak link on your end. And the worst part of it is that if you're damaged by any sort of attack throughout that personnel, you can't really complain to anyone because, like you said, it's not the CSP fault. So they really can't do much about it once the problem is on your side. So it's not just about, you can't really pass it on a problem that you should be the one to solve it, even though you're making sure that your assets apparently are in the safest possible place environment. I hope that makes sense to you guys.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have something to add on this. I totally agree that scalability is one of the main drivers to actually move to cloud and also to cloud security. I made the experience, especially in my region, so the DACH region, then that another reason currently is that there's a sheer lack of manpower. So companies do not always have the manpower to do security topics or to deal with security topics on their own. So one idea is to move everything in the cloud. Also having the thought in mind, if I do so, I also get the cloud security. Those cloud providers will do what I'm probably not capable of doing in the specific situation because I do not have the people for it. And I think that this is quite insufficient, or maybe not the right direction or the correct direction to think on, because, and now I go back to your statistic, you said 99% of the business failures related to this topic are based on the customer side. So I assume that the biggest issue we have here is the question, is the access done right? So we have a very well secured cloud environment that basically on security level, everything is done by the cloud vendors, but is the access done right? So yeah, probably this is something that everybody has to take care of. Am I using the right technology to actually get access in the right way? Yeah.
It's interesting that you have mentioned that because, well, even though the global spending will reach $60.69 billion in 2023, and that was, well, that would be a 27% year over year, we don't see the number of cyber attacks uh, decreasing and being reduced with this increasing spending in security. So an interesting aspect is, why is it happening? So it really connects exactly what you said, what you guys have said, that we need to address we need to train the people, we need the workforce to help not only implementing but also operating all of those cloud security solutions. And probably in 2023, those threats and risks will continue to evolve. And well, whether you're investing in SaaS, IaaS, or PaaS, there are several solutions that are being developed to protect cloud environments. We have CASP, we have, sorry, we have CSPM, we have the KIM solutions, and now we have just released our cloud infrastructure entitlement management module, our cloud entitlement product. So this really aligns to the trend that, well, cloud security, and we're really paying attention to this trend and implementing new solutions to protect cloud environments.
Mm.
Yep.
Let's go to our fourth trend, and this is something that I really like, ransomware, because we hear about ransomware a lot in the news. And we heard about this in 2022, and we believe that we will continue to hear about ransomware in 2023. Well, and a sign that this will happen is because, well, according to Sophos, that 60%, 66% of organizations were hit by ransomware in 2021. And it's interesting that this number was 37% in 2020. And this is a demonstration that malicious attackers, they have become more capable of executing the most significant attack at scales. And also, Checkpoint elected ransomware as the number one threat to organizations, stepping up to nation state actor levels. And I'd like to start here asking you, Florian, why do you think that, well, ransomware is still a threat to organizations, and what are aspects do you think that leads to this consideration that they are the number one threat to organizations?
Okay, so thanks for the question. I actually, yes, I do believe that ransomware is still a topic, and it has many reasons for it. Is it awareness, on the user's end, or is this just that companies are probably not able to deal with it in the correct manner? So if we want to go down the road and take the easiest option, so what could be a very good way to actually address this? If we know that this topic is getting more important because we do see more and more ransomware for I would call it criminals, it is way easier to do attacks like it has been in the days, and we can probably think about this getting easier for them day by day, year by year. So what options do we have? What are the most simple ones? And what directly comes to my mind is the least privilege principle. So one aspect I would recommend to deal with when we talk about ransomware is to deal with the privileges of users. So why do companies suffer to really implement a least privilege principle in their companies, on the endpoints, in the infrastructure? So this could be, or this is one of the main points I would like to stress out in terms of how to deal with it actually. Yeah. Of course, there are other ones we talked about in the former point. We talked about access. Yeah, how's it done in the correct way? And we can also talk on the points of perimeter security. So how do we avoid that actually ransomware is able to get in my secured infrastructure? And we have several options here to discuss, but it all boils down that we need to talk about how is access done or dealt with in my company in the correct, right way and manner. Yeah. So those are my thoughts about this topic.
Yeah. And to Florian's point here, back in June, I was at the RSA conference, the biggest security conference in the world in San Francisco, and that was the first time when I heard about ransomware as a service, which is it's a thing that ransomware sort of became a criminal's business. So what shocks me the most at the time was that you don't really need to be a hacker, or you don't need to be like a very specialized IT professional and a very good criminal to use this. You can just go online in the deep web and choose the type of ransomware that you want to use and hire it as a service. So they, the companies that have developed those ransomwares, they will support you in your criminal activities. And it's crazy to think like we're not just deal with criminals, we're dealing with a very organized criminal institution that has a power of taking down businesses. And to Florian's point here, I heard everywhere I went throughout 2022, and all the scenarios, and I did a lot of role plays with companies that were kind of trying to replicate what happened to them while they were under a ransomware attack. And in every single situation, the thing that the criminal what they were looking for, and while they were inside the company waiting to actually, go through the attack, they were looking for privileged credentials. They were doing lateral movement towards getting the right keys so they can, hit you in the worst possible way, in a way that you cannot, choose to not pay the ransomware and for what they're asking for to release your data once they have it all encrypted. So yes, that's the goal. Imagine that you have a criminal business going on right now, which is going to increase for next year. And what they're looking for is your privilege keys, your information that really gives them access to what will hit you where it really hurts. So I don't want to scare you. I don't want to make this scarier than already is, but you definitely want to think about it in a way that how do I protect what criminals are looking for? I think
Yeah.
that's to what Florian just said. I think that's what I can add.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it is, it can be very exhausting to always talk about the latest trends in terms of firewall technology, in terms of vulnerability management, EDR. They're all great technologies, but a really proper way to do it on a very basic level is to just get rid of any privileges that users might have, and therefore I always recommend think about least privilege principle. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's very smart.
it's interesting that you're talking about privileged credentials, because that comes that talks with the 5 most relevant ransomware attacks in 2022. And we start talking about them and develop more about privileged credentials. First, we have the NVIDIA ransomware attack. The attack vector was exactly compromised passwords and compromised credentials, and that came from the employee credentials have been leaked and allow the attackers to gain access to the infrastructure. Also, the second ransomware attack that called our attention is the Costa Rica, where they declared state of emergency during the to its knees, impacting not just government services, but also the private sector. We also have the Bernalillo County ransomware attack in New Mexico that also affected government services. That's an interesting ransomware attack, Toyota, because that came from supply chain. And I give you a spoiler that this will be one of our next trends. The concern about supply chain attacks and the impact that Toyota had. It caused a whooping in a 5% dip in the company's monthly production capability. So imagine the impact that the business had or might have in case of a cyber attack involving ransomware. And lastly is the Bridgestone ransomware attack that also affected plants and led to plant closures all across North America. And also, we're talking about ransomware and the impacts that it has for organizations. So there's a report from Sophos that shows that the average cost of a ransomware attack is 1.4 million. And this cost is predicted to increase. Well, according to Cybersecurity Ventures, the ransomware costs are predicted to be $265 billion annually by 2031. And something that I'd like to bring here and discuss with you guys is a question that several companies make, and should they pay or they should not pay the ransom, the ransom. And this is something that we already discussed, Roger. Should or should not the company pay the ransom? And before I give the word to you to further explore this topic, well, we have data that 46% of companies affected by ransomware, they pay the ransom, but only 4% recover their data. Well, does that surprise you, Roger? And this is something that we discussed. Should the company pay or pay not the ransom?
I think it's not a question of before you think about if you should or not pay the ransomware, is you have to answer, can I pay it? Because most ransomware attacks, they demand companies to use cryptocurrency to do so. And cryptocurrency is not something that we can find on a daily basis as much as we want. It's actually very hard to have that kind of asset just available for this kind of scenarios and situations. So even if you want to pay, sometimes it's just impossible for you to. You need to. It takes time and it takes effort, and it's not every company that it's ready to do so if they decided to move forward. So I think before thinking about if I want or not pay a ransomware, uh, can I do that if I decided to? And the second reason, which we already pointed out, is that I don't think that's an option just because it doesn't solve the problem. Companies that have gone through this and decided for their own purposes to pay the ransomware, after they were given back their data, a lot of it was damaged, was still encrypted. The keys to unencrypt the information that was stolen, they just didn't work. And and you cannot consider yourself a customer in this situation. So there's no one to complain. You can't really go after the attackers and say, you know what? You did not, do your part of the deal. I paid for it and you were, trustworthy. Well, they're criminals. They should not be trustworthy. So there's no one to go after, and there's no place to complain. So I think before even considering if I should or not pay a ransomware is to understand that really is not a possibility. You do not want to invest that amount of money to do not get the information you need and still be, still have to deal with the same problems that you did before or while you weren't under attack. So I don't think that is an option. And I don't think, even though people may think about doing insurance, so I'll have an insurance, a cyber insurance. So if I go under an attack, I can use that money to pay the ransomware. That's really not the brightest mindset. You can use the insurance money to overcome the problem while, you have resilience to go through the scenario, but not really to pay a ransomware, because that most of the times, as you just showed, that doesn't solve the problem. So
Yeah, I absolutely agree, Rogerio. One more thing that always comes to my mind when I think about this question is, if the company, you talked about the way of paying it, but for me also a point is the company able to pay anyway? I mean, if we when we talk about big companies, enterprise, yeah, then most likely, yes, they're able to pay it in any way. But most of the attacks currently or also in the future will affect medium and small businesses. And there the question occurs, are they even able to pay? Yeah. Besides that, just not talking about this question anymore, I do also have the feeling that we do not think about should we pay or should it be paid or shouldn't it be paid. It shouldn't be paid from my direction. Yeah, I mean, the risk of not getting the data back in a proper way is very high. And therefore, I would not think in this direction. The direction we, or not we, but the companies need to think in is how to prepare and not to thought afterwards. Yeah.
yeah.
And even in some countries, it's illegal to pay the ransom. So, and also this is also a trend that more countries will regulate how ransom will be paid in the upcoming years.
Yeah.
So let's move to the next trend. So we have cyber warfare affecting critical infrastructure, and at least that's something that affected Europe a lot during 2022. We have the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and I'd like to start with you, Florian. What was your feeling during at least in this cyber warfare? You're closer to Russia and Ukraine than we are, so I'd like to hear first your impressions on how those attacks happened during 2022.
Yeah, first of all, so also on a personal level, that really affects me a lot. I do get usually very emotional when I talk about this, makes me speechless overall. And I really hope that, this whole situation will turn to a better as soon as possible. And especially when it boils down to the point of actually cyber warfare, so not the actually war, but what comes along with it. I do think that it will get more and more crucial overall. So we basically see attacks like this on a daily basis, probably not the biggest ones that we hear that really affects critical infrastructures and so, but we see that this is happening more and more often. And it is also clearly visible that attacks like this do on a level where we talk about material, where we talk about money, where we talk about resources. This is probably a very easy way to do or deal as much damage as possible. So I do have the feeling that currently this is much too less taken sought after. So we definitely needs to get to a definitely need to get to a point where everybody just realizes this, how important it is to prepare and to deal with cyber warfare. Absolutely.
So, well, critical infrastructure is a crucial part of any country, and we have more connected devices. Well, at least in 2020, Gartner estimated that there were 20 billion connected devices, and by 2023, Cisco expects to have 29 billion devices. So this creates a significant attack surface that can be explored by malicious attackers. And 90% of CISOs reported one major cyber incident in the last 12 months, and the losses are around $2.5 million. And also, 30% of critical infrastructure organizations will be victims of OT attacks by 2025. And the aspects that concerned cybersecurity leaders, well, at least we brought these three here. We have malware that affects operational technology. We have the legacy devices aspect that, well, there are a lot of devices that are working with Windows XP, Windows 7. Those operational systems have no longer support from the vendor, and well, they have vulnerability, they have that can be explored by those malicious attackers. And the last is the poor visibility that IT leaders and security leaders have from these devices. And this last one is important because, well, you cannot protect what you don't know. And it's, well, these three aspects, they affect a lot how critical infrastructure will be affected. And I'd like to ask you, Roger, what do you think that leaders should do to address those problems? How they work to ensure that critical infrastructure is properly protected?
Well, I think Florian already sort of tipped on it when he said that you should not wait for something to happen in order to think how to solve it. You should, and that's the main reason why we're here today. We are trying to provide information so people can anticipate things. And unfortunately, cyber warfare, like we're just saying here, it's a reality. So you can either choose to pretend that that doesn't affect you and wait for it to happen, so you need to deal with the damage, or you can treat reality as it is. And even though it's not a bright situation, it's a very sad and it's a hard struggle for everyone to be involved with. We cannot deny it. So we need to make sure that as we're planning next year's action, especially as far as security goes, we need to understand that we can be a part of a situation that wasn't intended just specific to ourselves. What a ransomware attack does, they're planned for a specific company, like we're just talking about. In this scenario, this may be something that wasn't specifically designed for your situation, but will hit you because you're a part of the system. And like you just said, the number of devices connected to the internet these days, they're just huge. And it's really hard to keep track of who is connected to what in your company and outside of it. So you need to treat reality as it is, and you need to open time, and you need to have space in your daily activities to look into this kind of scenarios and plan what is the best way to make sure that I can go through a situation like this and overcome those issues because I got prepared beforehand. And I think that's one of the trends that we're actually going to talk a bit more today. So I'm not going to go into it too much right now. But yes, you need to make sure that you're doing things that you need to do every day. So when it hits you, you're protected enough to go and overcome any hard situation that come across your company.
Excellent. And this next trend is exactly what we talked about when where we mentioned the Toyota attack, supply chain. So it doesn't matter if your infrastructure is connected, if a third party is not protected and is connected to your infrastructure, and that attack can come in the form of ransomware, of malware. So really what the feeling that we have is that the cybersecurity in the cyber attacks are greatly underreported. And proof of that is that according to a research from Panama, only 34% of organizations are confident that their suppliers would notify them of a breach of sensitive information. And well, 62% of organizations worldwide faced a supply chain attack in 2022. And Gartner expect this number to triple by 2025. And why do you think, Florian, that companies are not properly addressing the supply chain attack? Why do you think that why do you think that this happened?
Yeah, I do believe that when we talk about companies and the security of companies, you most likely tend to think only about yourself. So you're taking care of your own security, you take care that everything is well protected. But on the other side, you have the companies you deal with on a daily basis. You have external workforces, you have suppliers you work with, and I do have the feeling that most companies do not take care on the same level as they do for their own security when they think about the security of their suppliers. They are probably way smaller than they are in many cases, probably bigger. But I think that it is a very underestimated topic that companies do not care or do not take care or do not care enough to actually take a deeper look and at how my or their suppliers do actually do their cybersecurity or their security, IT security topics overall. Do they use proper technologies? Do they use a proper way to access my infrastructure? They are all topics that you need to consider. I do have the feeling that most of the time it is about how fast suppliers can act and how cheap, of course, they can act. Yeah, and security in those supplying companies is actually a topic that I do have the feeling currently falls short, and this is, as your number shows, have showed, a very relevant topic now and even more in the future.
And especially, I'd like to ask you something, Roger. Well, we there's a trend that says that, as a prediction from Gartner, that say that by 2025 there will also be casualties because of those supply chains attack, critical infrastructure attacks. How do you see that organizations will be prepared to handle with these casualties, exploring, for example, those supply chain attacks?
Well, it's like I used this before as well. It's like, for me, it's like driving a car. When you're driving it, you need to be you need to pay attention on what is it that you're doing, but you also need to be aware of what's happening outside of the car and around yourself. And by being careful with everything, it means to me that you need to be able to identify, other vehicles, other situations that are going around, and they can become a danger to yourself. Maybe if you're doing everything right, you're keeping to your lane, you're keeping, under the radar, you're using the right speed, but someone else would just lose it and come towards your direction. So if you're not aware of, if you're not capable of identifying everything that is going around yourself outside of your car, you might be, going direct to a situation that can harm you, and it can be fatal. So, and that's why I think identity is the key here. The possibility when you're driving, when you are capable of identifying everyone, what you're doing is in making sure that every identity, everyone that is connected to your space, you can manage the situation in the best possible way. So I think the way, like Florian said, I think the way to deal with supply chains to be able to identify everyone and to keep your eyes in every which one, in every company that it's connected to yourself, to your system, on how they're behaving. And everything that goes off track, you need to be able to do something on your side to make sure that you protect yourself. So it's a hard scenario, but it's definitely worth doing it and investing in, because, like I said, you can be doing everything right, but something from your supply chain can happen that can really cause you damage if you're not looking into it and make sure that you're protected to everything, inside and outside of the organization.
You have to be aware of everything, right?
Yes,
That
pay
happens in
attention to
your
everything. Yeah.
yes, and that talks exactly to the next trend, cyber awareness. And it's not only be aware of everything that happens, but also understand what you should do. So, and well, with the cyber threats becoming more aggressive and more difficult to spot, well, we talked first that malicious attackers are constantly evolving their techniques. So it's not only a matter of tools and also a matter of processes. It's a matter of people in this case. So it's impossible to invest in the state of the art of those solutions without, and processes and tools and everything, without addressing the people aspect. And 82% of data breaches involve the human aspect, and well, 70% involved phishing. And I like to give you the word to you, Roger, to talk about the human error. That 82% is a huge number to consider. And well, do you think that companies will finally realize that cyber awareness is the most important thing to address?
Well, I think the biggest problem here is when you underestimate something that you've heard a lot about. So let's say that how long have we heard as users, uh, digital users, how long has it been since we heard about phishing, right? Oh, so you should not click on this specific email that it's not trustworthy, or it's from someone that you do really not know. So we can't, since we've been hearing about this for such a long time, we tend to underestimate the strength on this kind of situation. This is just one situation as an example. So we kind of take for granted the fact that people, or most people, have heard about phishing. And what we do not consider is that, well, criminals, they try to be smarter than we are. So they will make sure that a phishing attack will look precisely as any other communication that you're receiving on a daily basis, and a very trustworthy one. So they are doing their job to make sure that you do not identify that that is actually a phishing attack. So communication is key. You need to invest in communication, and that's a never-ending job. It's not something that you do once. You need to implement it inside of the company, very regulate or recurrent, moments and situations where you can bring topics like this and use examples. It's actually very interesting when you go into what's public out there, and look into emails that were actually phishing attacks, and how criminals behave, how they use that. So people inside of the company can have an idea of, wow, is this what they're doing it? And for example, one recent attack that I saw that was throughout phishing was an email that for the company itself, it sounded like a request from a customer say that they actually need to change the order. And it was just so well prepared and done. And they're waiting for the right moment to send out that kind of email. So the communication happened throughout a Black Friday, like we just had, last weekend. So people were busy. They weren't really paying attention to the details. So that's where, you get hit by it. So I think the best way to treat security awareness is to not underestimate things that you may think that you already know, that you already know how to do it, that you're not going to be heated by it because you've heard about this kind of thing for a long time now. And that's really not the truth. Communication needs to be something that you do on a daily basis and for good. And you can't just think that because you spoke about it once, that would solve the problem. That's just naive from my perspective.
Absolutely. So also to me, awareness is one of the main pillars of every cybersecurity strategy out there that companies should implement. I mean, on the one side, you have the option to go after strategies that we also already discussed, like zero trust. But I do think that this should not overcome the importance of something like awareness. Everybody should be aware when they're working in a company that is open to attacks, that there are specific ways of handling specific tasks and information and data and everything. And this is a reoccurring task, like Rogerio already stated. But I think this is something that companies should do, and also should do on a frequent basis, just to also show that they take care. There are other options out there like zero trust, but if you go only in this direction, I do have the feeling that on a personal level, on an employee-based level, you definitely do turn in a direction that does not create the best working environment. So I do believe that you have to find, as a company, you have to find the middle ground on techniques that you implement to make sure security is proactively used in your company, but also on the other side, take care about your employees, show them the right way, actually on a frequent basis, teach them how to deal with specific situations, and then you're good to go.
Excellent. You said about communication, and well, at least we said about processes, people, and tools. And well, at least in my perspective, I believe that in terms of tools, a simple and basic tool to implement to enforce security and increase the cyber awareness is the use of MFA. We were talking yesterday that MFA is not that expensive to implement, and it is a security mechanism that helps significantly to increase the level of security in organizations. Well, we're heading to the end of this webinar. We're a bit out of time, but I will move to the last trend. And I'll just give here the definition of cyber awareness, cyber resilience. And then I give the word to you, Roger, because we know that you have talked about a lot in 2022 about cyber resilience. And according to Gartner, cyber resilience is considered as the degree of adaptiveness and responsiveness to a threat or failure of digital business ecosystem. And then I leave the word to you, Roger, so you can develop this topic better than I.
Sure. I think when we talk about trends such as we did up until now, it's a natural thing to respond to it by feeling afraid or having your fearness increase by this prediction. So instead of making you well or better prepared for the future, you tend to go to that state of frightening. Oh my God, how do I deal with all of this? And I think that's where resilience comes in, cyber resilience, because when you look into this topic, and that's I think the main topic that I heard throughout the entire year, everywhere that I went to it. When you look into cyber resilience, you finally come to a place where a solution is provided. to overcome any hard scenario. So, and like you just presented, resilience is about being capable of going through whatever comes to your way and overcome those challenges. And that's why I think one of the reasons why in every situation that I went through last year, I was able to be a part of role play scenarios where companies sort of try to replicate situations that were hard to overcome, such as ransomware attacks. So I actually was a part of a simulation of a board meeting from an American company while they were under a ransomware attack, and how the board react and treated that situation. And while you go through a scenario like this and you simulate a situation such as that one, you understand every aspect of a hard cyber attack and how you should manage that before you go through a situation like that. So resilience is about getting ready and go. We use a lot of the definition. We compare cyber resilience with things such as jiu-jitsu. So there's a philosophy inside of the jiu-jitsu that if you understand how that martial art works, you know that you have to practice every day. So when you go to a situation that's challenging to yourself, you can overcome that without hurting anyone, without hurting yourself or without hurting others and third parties, like we just said about, the supply chain. So that's what you want to achieve. That's what cyber resilience means. And as I was at the RSA last June, as I said before, I was fortunate enough to be a part of a very specific keynote session where they replicate this scenario, so they could teach the audience itself what cyber resilience actually means, what it means to be able to overcome that. And a couple months after it, so that was in June, in August, they made that session public. And I just shared the link with our team here. They will share it with everyone. So I really recommend people to if they have the time, to go online and watch the scenario of what to do when a ransomware hits. This is precisely what cyber resilience means. This is how a company is capable of going to a situation like this and overcome that problem. Sometimes going to a better place, becoming strong because they went through an attack and they were able to survive it. So it's not about being frightful or having fear of a situation like this, but you need to feel secure enough that whatever comes your way, you can overcome. You can go through it, and so you can still engage with life and do your thing, do your business without being afraid of anything. So I think that's what really cyber resilience means and represents.
Absolutely. And what is important to me is that every single bit counts. So if you do not have an idea how to start with the basics, start with something simple. Go MFA, for example. This really helps to improve your IT security. So I do talk to a lot of companies where I have the personal feeling that they are currently overwhelmed with the sheer number of options they have to invest into cybersecurity. Make your plan, start with something easy, and start with something that's probably easier to implement than something probably a heavier topic. I'm very sure that everybody is able to get the information on what is easier to implement than other stuff, but start. Do not circle around the topic, just go for it.
It's an excellent thing that you've mentioned here. Well, that's also a recommendation to go step by step. Don't try to embrace the word. And also, this also connects to the risk appetite that your company has. Align your cybersecurity risks with your business risks to understand what exactly you need to do to develop cyber resilience. That was an excellent point, you guys. Well, we're heading to the end of the webinar. We don't have time anymore for questions, but I just want to thank Florian and Roger for your insights during the webinar. I'll just give the word to you to your final thoughts, so we can wrap up this session. But at the same time, I thank you all for being part of this webinar. So thank you, Roger, for your participation, and thank you, Florian, as well.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Florian. Had a good time. Yeah.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. We don't have time for questions, guys. But anyway, there's our email here at the slide, so you can feel free to send out your questions to us, and we'll be happy to answer that. And to wrap up and to end this webinar, I thank you all for being part of this session. I wish you all happy holidays, and hopefully in 2023 we see again in the next Senha Segura webinars.
Yep. Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.